This woman was left with no choice but to kill her husband to save her son. Tina Tolbert was living in Michigan. She'd met her partner, Miłosz, when she was 25. Now, she was fairly inexperienced in relationships, and Miłosz really love-bombed her. They soon moved in together despite her family having serious concerns. They knew the red flags and could see that he was controlling her, but Tina was already under his spell. Now, he started isolating her from her family and friends. He would brainwash her into thinking that her loved ones didn't care about her. One evening, after an argument, he flew into a rage and beat her up. Although she did call police, she was too embarrassed and ashamed to press any charges. Now, Miłosz knew that Tina wanted to leave him, and he threatened her that if she did, he would kill her and her family. He ended up leaving his job and telling Tina that she had to support him financially. He began to regularly her, and when she resisted, he would get even more violent. Eventually, one of these attacks resulted in a pregnancy. Tina gave birth to baby Philip in 2011, and he was diagnosed as autistic. He was non-verbal, and Tina just knew that he was her reason for continuing with life. She had a strong desire to love him and keep him safe. Meanwhile, Miłosz was pressuring Tina to marry him. She admitted that their wedding day was the most unhappy day of her life. She was continuously having to hide her black eyes from people. The marriage ended up only making the violence worse. Now, this went on for years, and when Philip turned 7, Tina was due to go and see some friends. When she returned, Miłosz attacked her. He swung a chair at her so hard that it snapped her arm. The bone was sticking out of the flesh. Now, he refused to take her to hospital until she drank some alcohol and agreed to pretend that she did it when she was drunk. She was too scared to decline, and so she went to the hospital. They believed the story, and then they sent her home with him. When they returned home, the attacks continued. He would choke her and slam her head into furniture. Now, one of these attacks was so brutal that it actually left a dent in the fridge where he slammed her head into it. Then things eventually came to a dramatic conclusion. Miłosz bundled Philip and Tina into the car one day and said they were going to run some errands. He took a gun with him and told them, "You're going to die today." When Tina asked why, he said that he hated them both. When they returned from running the errands, he put the gun on the top of the fridge, and Tina saw her opportunity. She grabbed the gun from the top of the fridge and hid it near her. Miłosz confronted her, and she grabbed the weapon. He walked towards her grinning and said that she had no choice but to either kill him or he was going to kill them both. She took the gun and fired, and then she rang police and told them she'd killed her husband. When she was arrested, she had broken ribs, a torn spleen, a broken arm, and a fractured wrist, to name just a few of the injuries. She told officers that she would plead guilty if it meant that she could get back out to her son quicker. She spent 20 months in prison for voluntary manslaughter. When she was released from prison, there was a cheering crowd outside, including her son.
This gorilla, before he was gonna die, he had a final message to the world.
Like Harambe? Was this Harambe?
No.
Okay.
So this gorilla's name is Coco.
Oh,
Coco the gorilla. I don't know if you ever heard of it.
I heard of Coco the gorilla.
So Coco the gorilla had a final message to the world.
What was it?
And here, I'll show you what it is.
Okay, man.
It's mad deep, bro. Listen. So pretty much he says, I am flowers. I am nature. Coco love man. Earth. Coco love. But man, stupid. And look, he's crying. You can see the gorilla's crying. He's stupid again. He says stupid. Coco sorry. Coco cry.
Damn, wow.
Time hurry. Fix earth. Help earth.
Oh, that's crazy.
And he says hurry. Protect earth.
Nah.
So this is before he was gonna die.
This man shot and killed a child abuser on TV. Gary Plauché lived in Louisiana. He had an 11-year-old son called Jody. Between 1983 and 1984, Jody was having karate lessons. Unfortunately for Jody, however, he was having lessons with 25-year-old Jeffrey Doucet. Jeffrey was a child abuser and had been essaying Jody for the duration of the time he was supposed to be teaching him karate. In a dramatic turn of events, he ended up on Valentine's Day 1984 kidnapping Jody. He held the young boy at a motel in Anaheim, California, where he used the time to do unspeakable things to the child. Police eventually tracked down the disgusting man and innocent child after Jeffrey had allowed Jody to bring his mum from the motel. Police raided the motel room, rescued the young boy and arrested the man. On March the 1st, Jody was reunited with his relieved family, but after Jody's dad heard what had happened to his son, he was enraged. He was interviewed on TV and said how helpless he felt. A couple of weeks later, on March the 16th, Jeffrey was flown back to Louisiana to face trial. He arrived at the airport with officers who walked him through handcuffed at around 9:30 p.m. Little did he know, Gary was about to take the ultimate revenge. Gary was tipped off by news crews as to when Jeffrey would arrive, and he waited for him with a handgun. He hung around wearing a baseball cap and sunglasses so that he wouldn't be recognised. As Jeffrey was escorted through the airport, Gary fired a shot into his head at point-blank range. Jeffrey fell into a coma and died the next day. Gary was initially charged with second-degree murder, but agreed to a plea bargain and was charged with manslaughter. He got a 7-year suspended sentence with 5 years probation and 300 hours of community service. His defense team argued that he was driven to temporary psychosis after hearing what happened to his son. The judge ruled that sending him to prison wouldn't help anyone, and there was virtually no risk of him committing another crime. When he was 67, he did an interview stating he did not regret killing him and would do it again. He sadly had a stroke and passed away in 2014 in a nursing home, aged 68.
This reminds me of when the devil tried to beat Jesus Christ on the cross. He gave it his best attempt, but miserably failed. Then Jesus Christ went down to hell and defeated Satan, and 3 days later arose from the grave. If you hate Jesus content, then keep scrolling, but if you love Jesus, then subscribe.
A man reported his girlfriend missing, and then he was found dead. On the 21st of May this year, police got a concerning phone call. The call came from Matthew Poole. He was reporting his girlfriend, 38-year-old Ashley Karigian, missing. He told officers he hadn't seen her for a week and was starting to get worried. She was last officially seen alive on the 14th of May. Now, this was strange for her to just disappear because she was actually the mother to an 11-year-old girl called Delilah. Police began looking into the whereabouts of the missing woman and 2 days later showed up at a property in Hawaii. When officers arrived at Matthew's home, they heard a loud bang. They then discovered his body. He appeared to have unalived himself as they entered. Now, evidence from that property then led them to a vacant, undeveloped property. It was there that they made a heartbreaking discovery. They found a body, quote, in advanced stages of decomposition, end quote, at 7 p.m. that night. The body was later determined as Ashley. She had passed away from a gunshot wound to the head. Police are considering the double killing a murder and then self-unaliving.
The Am Spiegelgrund Clinic in Vienna stands as one of the darkest chapters in Nazi Germany history. Viewer discretion is strongly advised. Now, the Am Spiegelgrund Clinic was for children in Vienna during World War II, where 789 patients were murdered under child euthanasia in Nazi Germany. As you know, the Nazis had a very strong hatred to people who did not fit their ideology of what the supreme human was. And doctors and midwives were bribed to report both mental or physical abnormalities in newborns or children to authorities. By the end, over 700,000 people had most of their personal data compiled. And I got this excerpt from Normandy, 1944. They do first-hand accounts from World War II. Disabled children were separated from their families and taken to special hospitals, and the word euthanasia was not used in Nazi propaganda, leaving the real intentions of the Nazis undiscovered. The program was later expanded to include adults, most of whom underwent compulsory sterilization. The Nazis also worked hard to cover up the increasing death rates at this clinic and other institutions that involved Action T4. And Action T4, the code name for the Nazis' euthanasia program. And under this program, physicians were required to transfer their patients to clinics like these. Am Spiegelgrund was divided into two, a reform school and a children's ward. These poor children were subjected to medical experiments. They were victims of nutritional and psychological abuse. Some died by lethal injection, and gas poisoning. Other children die by starvation, disease, or exposure to toxic elements. And get this, the brains of up to 800 victims were preserved in jars and were kept in the hospital for decades. Now, survivors Johann Gross, Alois Kaufmann, and Friedrich Zohr provided first-hand testimony of what they had to endure. Electric shock therapy, the cold water cure, being repeatedly submerged in freezing bath water until nearly unconscious, the sulfur cure, which were injections into the leg causing agonizing pain to prevent these children from escaping, spinal injections with apomorphine and phenobarbital, were intentional overdoses on sedatives, followed by exposure to extreme cold or diseases, starvation imposed as observation, and they also infected kids with tuberculosis to study its effects. Adding to the unspeakable suffering, many patients branded seriously disabled simply disappeared under mysterious circumstances, and the freaking hospital staff just blamed it on things like pneumonia or fatal muscle contractions. In reality, children were just being murdered. According to one of the survivors, Alois Kaufmann, he said that every 2 to 3 weeks, the weakest would be plucked from the group, the bedwetters, those with hair lips or mental delays, never to be seen again.
How would you handle being released from prison after being convicted of murder? Gypsy Rose and her mum Dee Dee looked like a close mother and daughter. Gypsy appeared disabled and her mother went everywhere with her, pushing her in her wheelchair. Dee Dee explained to everyone that her daughter suffered with multiple conditions, including leukemia and muscular dystrophy. Gypsy was prescribed endless medications for these various complaints. She also went through a number of various surgeries and procedures. However, it would later be revealed that nothing was as it seemed. The truth was, Gypsy was perfectly able to walk. She had none of the illnesses her mother had claimed she had. She wasn't bald due to having cancer, she was bald because her mother shaved her head for attention and sympathy. Eventually, Gypsy met a man online called Nicholas. She told him about her mum and the pair came up with a fatal plan. In June 2015, Nicholas stabbed and killed Dee Dee while Gypsy waited nearby. Gypsy was released from prison in December last year. You may be familiar with this case from the documentary The Prison Confessions of Gypsy Rose Blanchard. It's on Crime and Investigation and Crime and Investigation Play. It's currently still available to watch if you missed it. There's now a brand new series. Gypsy Rose Life After Lockup follows Gypsy as she's released from prison. It looks at how she navigates coping with life on the outside. Gypsy Rose Life After Lockup starts on the 10th of June at 9 p.m. Catch it only on the Crime and Investigation channel or stream it on the Crime and Investigation Play app. See the link in my bio for more details.
The housing market is about to crash when people start finding out about galvanized square steel. If you ever see a building with protruding blocks like these, you know Little John has left his mark. This absolute maniac makes a living from turning the smallest spaces into fully livable homes, using money he saved from laying bricks, growing carrots, and even keeping his grandpa's treasures safe. But are these expansions even possible? He takes apartments from 32 square feet all the way down to 1 square foot, which I don't think even exist, and shows you how you can turn a literal shoebox into a livable home. And he does it all with that goddamn galvanized square steel and screws he borrows from his aunt. Galvanized steel is just steel coated with a layer of zinc to make it more durable and rust resistant. Now you know. Now, of course, Little John is a fictional character in this series, but some of his transformations are pretty mind-blowing and borderline plausible if you ask me. Some, that is, until he gets away with questionable regulatory offenses with that legendary galvanized square steel, but we'll get to that in a bit. Because a few of these are actually pretty cool. Like, how do you take a 32 square foot apartment and turn it into a fully functioning home that I'm low-key kinda jealous of? I don't know about you, but I think I could actually kinda live here. But he doesn't stop there because it's about to get weird. His apartments get smaller and smaller, yet somehow manages to include almost every necessity of life every time. Take this one for example, a 10 square foot space that even on his own he could barely fit inside of. How on earth can anyone live here? Galvanized square steel. That's how. Removing the windows, he builds a steel frame secured with those screws from his aunt and covered with eco-friendly wood veneer, which I'm pretty sure is illegal, but he does this every time. He even manages to do it with a 1 square foot apartment, once again pulling off a miracle. Although I'm not sure I trust that bunk bed, bathroom, kitchen hybrid going on. Sounds nice and all, but just think about how this would all look like from the outside. There's no way this would ever work, right? Turns out expanding an apartment like this is most likely illegal in your area. There may be some rare places that allow high-rise extensions like these, but even then, you're dealing with questionable structural integrity that might end up collapsing in your sleep. What we do know is Little John needs to be stopped, or soon every residential high-rise building is going to be a cubified Minecraft server looking ass mess. Or maybe we're just having a glance at the homes of our future, this being the only way people are going to be able to afford real estate very soon. Just kidding.
This is the best thing that could possibly have happened to this franchise. Well, actually, if they just left it alone in the first place, that would have been the best thing to happen to this franchise. This movie shouldn't have been franchised, but I digress. This is the best news that the Exorcist Believer trilogy could have hoped for. So as many of you might already know, or many of you might not know, Mike Flanagan has been brought on to make the new Exorcist film. It's not going to be a direct sequel to The Exorcist Believer, but it is going to exist within that world. Honestly, if David Gordon Green directed a sequel to Exorcist Believer, I can't imagine how bad that film would be. I don't think I would have even I would have watched it. I would have gone to watch it just to see what kind of train wreck he had made. But Mike Flanagan is one of the most loved, the most trusted horror filmmakers of our generation. Whether you like his movies, whether you hate his movies, you can't deny the fact that he is an excellent filmmaker and he knows horror. Look at The Haunting of Hill House, for instance. That is a scary TV program. Oculus, one of the most underrated hidden gems you will ever stumble across. He doesn't put a foot wrong. He also has a track record of saving franchises. Does anybody remember that god-awful movie called Ouija? Mike Flanagan was brought on to direct Ouija 2, Origins of Evil, and that is a gangster film. It is my least favourite Mike Flanagan project, but I still really like it. I think it's a very good film. It's got really good scares without it being in your face, tropey as hell, full of jump scares. It's a good, scary popcorn flick. I don't want that with this. As many of you may know, The Exorcist is my all-time favourite movie. Not just my favourite horror movie, it's my favourite movie. I think it is genuinely the greatest movie ever made. On a technical level, on a historical level, it is perfect. It is faultless. So the fact that David Gordon Green was brought on to do this project, to make this, the sequel, The Exorcist Believer, was a joke. I was very, very worried about it. When they dropped the trailers, I was very excited about it. But upon actually watching the film, it was trash. The first half was okay, second half awful, and it ends alright. But for the most part, it's a terrible film. It completely shat all over the legacy of the original movie. I would rather watch The Exorcist 2 than watch The Exorcist Believer. And I hate that film. But I can honestly stand here and tell you today that I am excited about this. I'm looking forward to it. I think this is in good hands. If it was given to any other director, I think I would be quite worried about it. Bar directors like, Robert Eggers or Alex Garland or whatever. Mike Flanagan, he knows horror. He's a horror connoisseur. He's a horror legend, an icon. And he's taking on the most valued, the most well-loved horror movie. A horror movie that is regarded as the scariest, the greatest horror movie of all time. And I have faith in Mike Flanagan. I have faith that he is going to be able to save this franchise. He is going to be able to save this trilogy. Not only save it, but respect the source material and give us the sequel we should have been given. Because if you tell me you're going to make a new trilogy of movies that acts as a direct sequel to The Exorcist, and you produce what you produced in Exorcist Believer, I'm not happy. This, however, makes me happy.
Lady was on live.
Yeah.
And she said that a skinwalker pretended to be her dog. This lady's on live with like around like 500 people. And she's saying, oh, this is not my dog. This is not my dog. And I'll prove it.
I'll know if she's my dog. Merlin, sit. Turn around. Turn around. Lay down.
She says on her live, she's like, everyone, this is not my dog. You know why? Because my dog is new. He doesn't know any of these tricks.
You're not my dog. My dog don't know how to do no fucking trick.
She locks herself in the room. Waits like an hour or so, right? Unlocks the door. The dog goes into the closet, right? And then she grabs her flashlight, puts the flashlight on. You can see a face. So the skinwalker transformed from the dog to an actual face. I'll show you.
This is the moment right before a trainer was killed by a bear in harrowing video footage. Stefan Miller was born in 1968 in America. He was always interested in wild exotic animals. He had an extensive career in his 39 years of life. Now, Stefan was somewhat of an adrenaline junkie. He was a stunt double and appeared on TV and film numerous times. He also worked for several years for a company called Predators in Action. However, his interest in wild animals would prove to be fatal. On the 22nd of April 2008, he was filming a promotional video at the Predators in Action set. The men had a 5-year-old grizzly bear called Rocky at the facility. Now, Rocky was actually somewhat of a celebrity himself. He had appeared on a film with Will Ferrell called Semi-Pro. Now, in the film, he actually appears to wrestle with Will Ferrell, but Will Ferrell was actually being played by a stunt double. The stunt double on the set was Randy Miller. Randy was Stefan's cousin. Now, during the shoot in question, Stefan had actually requested to wrestle with Rocky himself. The men felt that this would be okay, and the rationale for that was that Stefan had met Rocky previously and created some sort of relationship with him. Stefan said that he was also very confident around wild animals and was an experienced trainer. However, when the shoot began, the men really did see how unpredictable wild animals can get. Rocky lunged at Stefan too early, and this kind of caught Stefan off guard. It also caused Randy to panic and hit Rocky with a stick. It's then believed that this may have provoked Rocky even further. Rocky bit Stefan on the neck, piercing his main artery. Now, although Stefan actually appeared to kind of struggle away from the attack and still be standing, he did then die minutes later. Now, some people were calling for Rocky to be put down after this attack. Peter, however, argued that this is a wild animal and shouldn't actually be being used as an actor in the first place. Rocky was eventually allowed to retire to an animal sanctuary in California.
A little girl in Tijuana, she only prayed to Lucifer.
What the fuck? Don't say that name,
No,
fam.
okay,
I don't
fine,
like
my
that
fault,
name.
my fault. I'll say the L word.
Yeah.
When she was praying every day, she would pray for her mom, her dad, and the L word.
Yeah.
Right? At the end of the prayer, she would always say that, I'm always praying to him because no one prays for him.
Whoa.
Now this is what happens. The mom one day overhears her saying this prayer, and she's like, no, why are you saying that? I don't want anything to do with that. You only pray to God, right? So one day, she surprisingly dies. And at her funeral, there's a guy there, dressed up. He goes to the mom. I'll pay for all the funeral expenses. It's on me. Don't worry.
Damn.
This is what he says.
Yeah.
The mom says, why are you doing that? He's like, because she was the only one that prayed for me.
That's crazy. That's crazy.
And this is the crazier thing, fam.
Yeah.
When he signed for all the expenses,
Yeah.
the signature was just an L.
What the fuck? Nah, is this real?
This is a real story, fam. 2005 in Tijuana. Little girl.